English choices here.
We found on analysis.
Rabbit, run, rabbit, run, run, run.
Demonic entities that rip the insides out of their still living victims, spread disease, and cause night terrors.
These are some of the most terrifying demons from around the world you'll be praying you never come face to face with.
Who do you have to blame when you're sick? Other than the person who got you sick, that is. Well, if you know anything about ancient Sumerian mythology, and like blaming demons for your problems, then a sag may be responsible for your 14th trip to the toilet in the span of a day. A sag is a pretty nasty demon, said to cause sickness. He's a hideous creature born from the underworld. So busted looking is he that his presence alone is said to make fish in the rivers boil, and one glimpse at the entity can cause people to fall sick and die on the spot. What's worse is that he doesn't come alone. He has an entire army of demonic offspring at his back. But how did he manage to procreate, being that people can't even look at him without dropping dead? Well, a sag didn't make love with people. He had his offspring with the mountains themselves, all the mountains in the world. So his sons and daughters are part hideous demon, part hideous rock creature.
If you've ever seen Game of Thrones, I have a feeling you're gonna like this next one. It's called a Draugr, and honestly you'd have a hard time convincing me that it wasn't the inspiration behind White Walkers. The demon comes from Nordic folklore. It's an ancient undead monster known to rise up from its grave and attack the living. Oh, and it's most active at night and in the winter. Sound familiar? When a person dies and is buried in the ground, it is believed that they will turn into a Draugr if they either practiced black magic, were executed, died an accidental death, or were buried outside a churchyard. I know, it's a broad spectrum and it doesn't make a lot of sense, but that is the criteria according to the Nordic folklore. Along with attacking the living, Draugrs have been known to climb onto the top of people's homes and stomp on their roofs to keep them from getting a good night's rest. If a person inside the home becomes restless and decides to leave their house, this demon will kill them. Quite easily, might I add, because they are incredibly strong. When there are no humans around, these Game of Thrones-esque zombie demons have also been known to eat livestock and tear apart fences and barns. Oh, and one more thing, the only way to kill them is to cut their heads off, burn them, and then scatter their ashes in the ground. It's a process, but probably worth it considering how aggressive these particular demons tend to be.
The Agitar is not an entity you want to run into. Much like a sag, just the sight of her alone can cause you to drop dead. Agitar comes from Finnish mythology, known not only as the devil of the woods, but the mother of the devil himself. Agitar is incredibly ugly and evil, spreading diseases and pestilence wherever she goes, and she often takes the form of a serpent. She's accompanied by them as well, and some stories even say she can control them. Snakes come up a lot in ancient myths about demonic entities. Unsurprisingly, people still fear snakes today, but especially back in the day, snakes were often seen as symbols of evil and poison in cultures across the world. People in ancient Finland believed Agitar could bring bad luck and misfortune just by being near. She was blamed for all sorts of problems, from poor harvests to outbreaks of sickness. If things started going wrong, it was said that Agitar was probably lurking nearby, making life difficult just for the sake of it, as demons do.
In Japanese folklore, there is something called yokai, which directly translated means strange apparitions. They are a class of supernatural entities and spirits whose behavior can range from benevolent and kind to mischievous, all the way to malevolent and incredibly dangerous. One such malevolent and dangerous yokai is the rokurokubi, the apparition of a woman with sharp teeth, a taste for human flesh, and a neck that can stretch out of her shoulders and slither around the room like a 50-foot long snake. One nurse, we'll call her Jackie, shared an encounter with a rokurokubi, claiming that she had been attacked by one while working at a hospital in Japan. One night, one of Jackie's patients called her over to say that a woman wearing a red kimono had been standing beside her bed the whole night, but she couldn't see the woman's face because it had been covered with long black hair. The next night, a different patient told Jackie almost the same thing, except this time, the woman's neck was stretched up so high that her head was touching the ceiling. The nurse wasn't convinced, and the hospital wing she she was working at was pretty much empty, so she decided to lay down for a quick cat nap. She awoke to a phone call from her mother in the middle of the night who said, "Honey, are you okay? I had a terrible dream that you fell asleep at the hospital and a creepy woman was watching you as you slept." Upon hearing this, Jackie dropped her phone, and when she went to pick it up, she saw 2 feet underneath her bed. And when she looked up, the outstretched neck of a woman smiling from ear to ear with dead eyes and razor-sharp teeth. I guess Jackie fainted because the next thing she knew, she woke up surrounded by hospital staff. She quit her job that day and hasn't returned to the hospital since. And honestly, I don't blame her. I'm covered in goosebumps just from reciting the story. I couldn't imagine living it.
So you wake up one morning to find holes in your garage door. You check your security camera to see what's going on, and while skimming through the footage, you see this. Now, I can't find the source of the original video here, so if any of you can, please let me know down below. But my god, whatever the hell this thing is, it doesn't appear to be human. I think if I saw holes in a wooden door in my backyard, I might think it was a raccoon, maybe a large rat. But Gollum? I think that's the last thing I'd be expecting or wanting to see. The pig demon. Take a listen to this before I give you all the backstory. Can you make that out? Sounds a lot like someone saying, "I have the body of a pig," which wouldn't be so freaky if anyone in the room had said that they remembered hearing it or that they'd said it themselves. But nobody did. It wasn't until they looked over the footage later that this audio came up. This video was uploaded to YouTube by Devin Raymond, who wrote in the description that the recording was an EVP, or electronic voice phenomenon, picked up in a secret location during his tenure as a special guest and resident expert with a group that he can't disclose. Now, the EVP on its own is pretty disconcerting, but check out what they caught on camera later on. While filming into a dark crevice, they picked up this still image right here. Definitely would have been disturbing in person, or even going back and looking at the footage you'd taken earlier, knowing you were right there with whatever this thing was. But I like the fact that this demonic spirit or ghost or whatever it may have been would just announce to everyone, "I have the body of a pig." You look at it, it's like, I guess, yeah, you do look a little piggish. This next video comes to us from Reddit user Kipper2. Take a look. Now, pretty much everyone in the comments, including me, is saying this is a reflection on the window coming from inside the house. And while you could say it's just someone standing behind the camera person, take a closer look at the reflection. That looks like the demon face that shows up at the end of Skinamarink. Just what the hell is that? It looks almost like 2 faces kind of attached together. Kipper2 also gave some context in the description, writing, "A family member of mine shared this live photo she took of a deer in her and her husband's front yard. The two of them lived alone in this old southern farmhouse, previously owned by an older gentleman who had passed away in the home. She'd complained a few times about hearing walking in the attic. It wasn't long after this photo that they decided to move out. And yeah, best not to take your chances and just get out of there." See what happens when you mess with Ouija boards? Take a look at this. This video was posted to YouTube by Ouija Warning, a very apt name for a channel with a video like this. In the 2 or so minute clip, we watch as a group of girls and dudes mess with a Ouija board. One woman in the video, the one who ends up freaking out at the end, is laughing and joking the whole time as the planchette begins spelling out Zozo. She then asks if the spirit's name is Zozo, and when the planchette moves to yes, she begins to laugh again. Only this time, her laughter becomes less joyful and more hysterical, in a pained, panicked sort of way. Now, I've talked about Zozo on the channel before, a demonic entity said to haunt Ouija boards. An entity so malicious it's been known to cause physical harm on those who are unfortunate enough to run into it. Basically, if you're playing with a Ouija board and you end up contacting an entity and the letter Z or Z, depending on where you live, comes up at all, just stop right there. It's such a rare letter. Unless you asked it what its favorite anime is and the words dragon and ball came before, just don't take your chances. The Valentine Ghost. This footage was taken in the Valentine Museum in Victor, New York. Take a look. On April 21st of 2006, paranormal investigation was being carried out at the museum. Now, the quality of this footage isn't great, but you do see what looks like a semi-translucent figure walking out of the shadows, and past the camera. This has actually become a rather famous piece of footage in paranormal circles as well, because apparently it's never been fully definitively explained. According to the New York Haunted Houses website, the historic Valentine Museum was built in 1879, originally called Valentine Hall. It's a 5-story building which is now a museum with thousands of old artifacts and a good number of ghosts. Spirits have been known to play an old-fashioned music box, move tools around in the basement, and people have even seen full-blown apparitions. So, is this strange figure in the video one of these ghosts? Let me know your thoughts down below. Take a look at this nightmarish monstrosity. Gotta say, guy in a costume or not, I do not like this, and I would not like running into it in the dark, in the day, inside, outside, just no thank you all around. This video was posted to TikTok by Fastby Tess Horror with a description reading, "Muslim traveler finds himself face to face with a monstrous creature lurking in the shadows." We don't have a lot of context for this footage, just that the guy behind the camera supposedly came across this gargoyle-looking thing leering down at him from a ledge, and the man, completely shaken and petrified, started praying, and you can hear the terror in his voice as he does so. I find this thing deeply unsettling. This is what I kind of picture a genuine demonic creature looking like, although a lot of commenters say it looks like Frank from Donnie Darko, which, I mean, you know what, hey, that doesn't take anything away from it, still makes this creepy as hell. A man named Cody had started noticing odd things going on in his house one day, so he pulled out his phone and started recording. He'd noticed the light in the fridge and bathroom flickering. He also heard water running, so he peeked around the corner of the bathroom and, to his complete shock and confusion, found that the bathroom sink was on. And when a door behind him suddenly shut on its own, he really got freaked out and decided to step outside. He rang up his girlfriend, who urged him to just stay out of the house. Either there was an intruder or something else was going on, but none of it could be good. But Cody went back in to keep filming anyway, and suddenly found the place was a complete mess. Chairs had been knocked over, cupboards were open, so he immediately changed his mind and rightfully left the house again. And 2 hours later, he went back in, took a look in every single room to see if there's anyone there. He didn't find anything. That is, until he went back and looked at the footage that he'd taken later on. While he'd been filming his kitchen after having come back into the house that first time, he'd briefly panned across to his daughter's doorway. But while watching the footage back, he noticed something in the top right-hand corner, so he paused and zoomed in, revealing this. A ghostly-looking face peering out from above the doorway. This chilled him to the bone, and it's easy to see why. There are some very dubious ghost videos and pictures out there, blurry, often hard to make out, but this looks legitimately terrifying. It's clearly a face, but it does not look human. Speaking of creepy as hell, be glad you don't live in the same building as this next guy. In this short clip, we see a man filming a staircase, lit up by the light from his phone. On the stairs is a man rushing up to the camera. Clearly his intentions aren't good. Either he's just trying to freak out our cameraman, or he's got something worse in mind. Luckily, the cameraman manages to shut the door before the crazed guy manages to get too close, but then, for whatever reason, he decides to open the door back up again to see if the dude's still there, I guess, and it doesn't look like it at first. You know, all we see is the dark, empty stairwell, but in true horror movie fashion, just as the camera peeks around the corner, we get this. It's immediately clear that there is something very wrong with this guy's eyes. Was this dude on something? Is the video just a hoax? Or was this man possessed by a demon or a djinn? Talk about a demon realizing they're being filmed. This thing is right up close, staring directly into this person's car. Take a look. Would you just sit there continuing to film this, or would you be tearing out of there? I know what camp I'm in. I'd be gone. Those are not the eyes of someone who needs directions or wants to be friendly in any way. Those are the eyes of someone whose mouth is about to stretch 3 times its normal size and devour your face in a single chomp. She's almost still as a statue, completely unblinking, which is really what makes the whole thing so downright chilling. But take note of her eyes, just ever so slightly shifting to the person behind the camera. It's such a slight little movement, but just sends shivers up your spine. The fact that she looks so dead-eyed, just staring off into the distance, and then slowly switches to look right down the barrel of the camera, right at us as the viewers, it's just hard not to avert your eyes a little bit. The surveillance camera ghoul. This footage was taken by a man named Mario Lara, who captured something deeply harrowing on camera in his store in Mexico. Take a look. Leading up to this video, Lara had begun to notice strange things going on in his store. He'd arrive in the morning to find things out of place, especially a piñata which would repeatedly be found on the floor, and one morning it was found in a totally different spot than he'd left it the previous night. He started to think someone was sneaking into the shop after closing and messing with things, so he set up a security camera. One night he gets an alert on his phone. The camera was detecting motion. The last thing he was expecting to see, though, was this ghoulish figure poking out from a pile of piñatas. It's hard to make that sentence sound ominous. I mean, piñatas, they're just so joyous. Well, unfortunately for Mario, though, things weren't joyous in the shop. Things just continued getting worse. His security camera continued picking up odd footage at night, like piñatas spinning around on their own. One of his power drills, which was sitting on the floor, seemingly turned on by itself one day, nearly hitting his foot. It seemed like whatever this entity was, it was not looking to be friendly, despite being surrounded by festive piñatas. And we're kicking off the list with Baal. Baal is a figure you'll find in books about demons like The Lesser Key of Solomon, a book about demons written by someone who didn't want their name on it. Baal is a pretty scary demon, though I'm not sure if there are any demons that aren't scary. What sets Baal apart is that he's supposedly in charge of a whopping 66 legions of demons. So if you ever manage to summon this guy, you'd probably end up with a whole army of other demons to deal with as well. Besides his demon posse, this one's got some powers of his own. His main thing is invisibility. He can also make other folks invisible. As for what Baal looks like, that's a bit of a mixed bag. This guy is hard to pin down, even without the whole invisibility thing, which makes him even scarier. He's said to transform into a cat, a toad, a man. Sometimes he's even depicted as a mix of all three. Now we're heading over to Bali to discuss the Layak. These are not naturally born demons. They started out as normal human beings who had their souls corrupted by black magic, transforming them into these terrifying. During the daytime, they look human, but when night falls, they take on their true form. A large head with bulging eyes and long fangs. I say head because their head becomes separated from their body, floating around in the air with their entrails hanging out below. I've talked about the Layak a couple times. I just find them so creepy and cool. You can find these creatures hanging out around graveyards where they enjoy feeding on corpses, but their primary target, pregnant women. They like sucking the blood from unborn younglings. I think I'll take Satan over that any day, although I'm not a pregnant woman, in case you haven't noticed. So I'd probably be fine, but it's something I'd prefer not to witness. You know, you don't have to have something bad happen to you to know that it isn't ideal. Number 8, Krampus. Dealing with a demon would be a miserable experience at any point in the year, but Christmas, I gotta deal with the horned goat devil during the most magical time of the year. That is sad and unfair. Everyone's heard of Krampus. If Santa is Batman, then Krampus is the Joker, the anti-Santa, arriving to spread punishment to those on the naughty list every holiday season. Some young ones might get away relatively unscathed, a slap on the wrist, if you will, in the form of a beating from a demonic goat creature, but, better than the next option. Those who are particularly crappy throughout the year might just be taken away forever, thrown into Krampus's basket and whisked away before being drowned. Now, on the positive side, if the brat was bad enough where being kidnapped by a magical monster and drowned to death was a fitting enough punishment, then they probably deserved it, and the parents would probably be relieved to see them go. Next on the list we have the Yuki-onna. In Japanese folklore, the Yuki-onna, which translates to snow woman, is a type of yokai, a chilling character often depicted as a vengeful spirit associated with winter and snowstorms. She is said to appear on cold, snowy nights dressed in a white. She's also said to be incredibly beautiful. She mainly targets travelers or lost souls in remote, snow-covered areas. Yuki Onna typically approaches her victims silently and without warning, sucking out their life force with her icy cold breath, leaving them as frozen statues. Some versions portray her as a malevolent spirit who takes pleasure in causing harm to humans. Others show her to have a bit more of a sympathetic side, depicting her as a woman who died in the snow and is now bound to the winter landscape. And in these stories, she may spare those who show some kindness or even fall in love with some of her victims and set them free. All I know is that I hate winter, and the last thing I would want if I were lost in the Japanese Alps would be getting tricked into being frozen by a sexy ice spirit. And at number 6, we have Pichachas. In Hindu and Buddhist mythology, you've got these creatures called Pichachas. They're all about darkness, death, and hanging out in the underworld. Basically, they're the embodiment of evil itself. These guys like to go after the living, and like most demons, they clock in for work around nightfall. They have terrifying powers in their arsenal. We're talking shape-shifting, they can change form to mess with your head, and invisibility. So you've got to be on your guard, especially when the moon's out, because that's a prime time for these underworld bad boys to come out and cause some. In a nutshell, Pichachas are the real deal when it comes to supernatural troublemakers. Darkness, death, and possession are their specialty. Stick to the daylight hours and keep an eye out for any shape-shifting, invisible creatures lurking around. Not that you can really keep your eye out for either of those things, so I guess you're screwed.
Number 10, Legion. Jesus encounters a possessed man and calls on the demon to emerge, demanding to know its name, which is an important element of traditional exorcism practice. He finds the man is possessed by a multitude of demons who give the collective name of Legion. So yeah, this demon is made of countless evil spirits able to incarnate into a physical body or separate into their respective forms at will. While the types of demons that make up Legion is unknown, they are said to be the same kind of demon that would inhabit a host and would have a single hive mind. Speaking of which, the demons of Legion do act like a hive mind, always speaking in unison and always knowing what the other demon is thinking and preparing to do. Legion appears as a floating sphere that is protected by an outer shell composed of massive innumerable humanoid bodies. This enormous lump of flesh conceals an inner core whose identity can vary. Legion, when possessing a human body, begins to torture the psychological person, making them have depressive and negative thoughts to erase any desire of life from its hosts. Their attitude of possessing human bodies is seen as a horrible act to most angels, as it deprives humans of their only weapon, free will. Number 9, Furfur. Furfur, also known as Furcifer, is a demon who is said to be the Count of Hell, leading 26 legions. He speaks in a hoarse voice, has a fiery tail, and usually appears as a stag. He is said to be able to make men and women fall in love, and also has command over great storms. He gives true answers to all things past, present, and future, but he must first be commanded to enter a magic triangle, for if not, he will lie and deceive the conjurer. But if he enters the triangle, he will answer truly and gladly speak about divinity, the creation of the world, himself, and other fallen angels. He can also destroy all the conjurer's enemies by burning them up. And if the magician requests it, he will not suffer temptations from any spirit or in any form. Furfur can also supposedly be called upon when a mortal wishes to take vengeance on other demons. This is likely included in his capability to destroy the conjurer's enemies. And I just gotta say, how scary can a demon be if its name is literally Furfur? It sounds like a name someone would give their cat. Number 8, Beelzebub. Beelzebub is a former Seraphian turned into high-ranking demon who is considered one of the 7 princes of hell and oversees the Order of the Fly. In Catholic demonology, he is sometimes considered to be one of the first 3 angels to fall from heaven, along with Lucifer and Leviathan. He is also often confused with Satan, and the 2 names can be interchanged. However, strictly speaking, they are 2 separate entities. Beelzebub is the chief leader lieutenant of Lucifer and is one of the most loyal. He is commonly described as placed high in the hierarchy of hell and is seen as being associated with envy. He is also the prince of false gods, and flies play a large focus in imagery detailing him. The malignant spirit can even take the form of flies, according to some. I mean, ever heard of Lord of the Flies? Yup, that's him. Number 7. Mammon. Mammon in the New Testament of the Bible is commonly thought to mean money, material wealth, or an entity that promises wealth and is associated with the greedy pursuit of gain. After the rebellion in heaven, Mammon was banished to hell, where he is the one who finds underground precious metals that his demonic companions used to build their capital city, Pandemonium, by Lucifer's order. Mammon counsels the devils to be happy with what they've got and to create a home for themselves in hell. He is one of the 7 princes of hell, each representing the 7 deadly sins. Mammon represents greed and is known as the treasurer of hell, and was said to have had dealings with the Greek deity Zeus. It is thought that when you make a deal with the devil for wealth and fame, you are making it with Mammon. Number 6. Belphegor. Belphegor is a demon lord that presides over the sin of sloth and is one of the 7 princes that rules hell. He also assists people to make discoveries. For example, he seduces people by suggesting to them ingenious inventions that will make them rich, and they wouldn't have to work hard for it. As one of the fallen angels, Belphegor was originally a member of the Order of the Principalities, and after his fall, he became a demonic counterpart to one of the 10 Sephiroth that oversee the Tree of Life. He is the biblical enemy of the 6 Sephiroth, the patron angel of beauty. It's said that if Belphegor were to become too influential in the world, then the beauty of it all would become tainted, causing ruination.
Jared Leto bugs me. I don't know why the guy keeps getting all these incredibly high-paying roles, but whatever. Not here to talk about his acting, I'm here to talk about celebs being possessed by demons. And you could say that Leto was possessed by some type of malevolent force while playing the Joker. Either that, or he just took his method acting way too far. I'd go with the latter personally, but teach their own. While on the set of the S Squad, Jared Leto wasn't Jared Leto. He became the Joker himself, sending his fellow cast members disturbing gifts in the mail, most famously a dead rat to Margot Robbie. Aside from his whole Joker fiasco, Leto just strikes me as the type of dude who'd dress up in a white robe, head out to the desert, and preside over a group of his fans, all wearing white, in a super culty, multiple-day retreat. Oh wait, he has done that. I'd like to think it's just some bizarre performance art, but I don't know. I've done too many videos on cults now to take any chances. Not accusing him of anything, but you just never know. Up next is Kevin Spacey. The public opinion on this guy took a pretty dramatic turn, didn't it? I feel uncomfortable and awkward just standing here saying his name. I haven't even gotten to the meat of it. Want to talk about a celebrity revealing their dark side? Spacey's the perfect example. For those of you who have been living under a rock, in 2017 Spacey faced some pretty serious allegations of misconduct. Accusations surfaced from multiple individuals, some who'd been underage at the time Spacey had interacted with them. Following these allegations, Spacey was removed from various projects, including the hit series House of Cards. 8 staff members on that show claimed Spacey had been inappropriate with them. And just when we thought we probably wouldn't be hearing from this guy again though, in 2018 he uploads this really creepy video to YouTube on Christmas Eve called Let Me Be Frank, where he gives this cryptic, ominous monologue to the camera in a gentlemanly southern accent while wearing a Santa Claus apron. And man, he was trying to channel the devil in this monologue. He did a pretty good job of it. If you were to go back to 2012, you probably wouldn't ever think Ezra Miller would turn out to be a complete creep. I mean, the actor from Perks of Being a Wallflower? Come on. Yeah, well, things change. Sometimes for the worse. I'm not saying Ezra Miller is actually possessed by a demon, obviously, but I don't know, it seems like it. And I'm not just chalking his terrible behavior up to mental health issues either. Obviously, there's something going on. But, I mean, there are plenty of people who struggle with their mental health and will never do the abhorrent things Miller has. And the list of bad things is longer than you probably think. There have been violent attacks on totally unsuspecting innocent people. Miller threw a chair at a bar in Hawaii after yelling at a bunch of people out of nowhere. The chair whacked a woman in the head. A couple who'd allowed the actor to stay at their home were threatened with violence for some reason. Miller's also been accused of grooming. The list just goes on and on. Next up, we have the former frontman of the Norwegian black metal band Ghoul. of Gorgoroth. Now, the name Ghoul may not ring a bell for the Taylor Swift fans in the audience, but this guy is very well known in the metal scene, and a lot of this is thanks to an infamous interview he did for the documentary Metal Headbanger's Journey. The doc explores tons of metal subgenres, including black metal and some of its more controversial performers, including Ghoul, who's often seen as a Satanist, even though he has a very different definition of that than many people think. Anyway, when the director Sam Dunn sat down for an interview with him and asked what the inspiration was for his music, there was this long, uncomfortable silence before Ghoul simply stated,
Satan.
In 2005, just before this documentary was released, Ghoul had landed himself in jail after severely beating a man at a party and tormenting him for a prolonged period. At one point, handing the guy a cup and telling him he was going to drink his BLOOD. Ghoul claimed the unnamed man, though, was the one who attacked him first. We'll probably never know. Who can resist just sitting down and watching the entire Men in Black movie when it starts playing on TV? Will Smith, just an icon. He's been a cowboy, a cop, he's fought aliens, vampire zombie thingies, he's just an icon, which is why it was so odd to watch him walk up to Chris Rock and smack him in the face at the 2022 Academy Awards. It was almost like he was possessed. Now, unlike many demonic possessions though, Will's malevolent entity wasn't inside him, nor was he inside her for that matter, and hadn't been for a very long time. But she was sitting right next to him, and through her powerful influence, she cast her hellish spell on Smith, who walked onto the stage like a ghoulish marionette under the control of an unseen hand of evil to deliver the historic slap that would echo through the homes of the dumbstruck public around the globe, forever changing the course of history. With that said though, I'd also like to say he's a grown man who's very much responsible for his own actions. I know. This next actor was in Beetlejuice. Topical. The second one just came out recently. I actually thought it was pretty good. What you guys think of that? If you've seen it, let me know down below. Anyway, sadly, I won't be talking about any of the fantastic performers in that movie. It's this list, so you can probably guess who I'll be discussing. Yeah, Jeffrey Jones. Just like Kevin Spacey, it's another name that just kind of makes you queasy now. Jeffrey Jones was never a huge star, but he was a serviceable actor. He worked with Tim Burton in a few of his projects. He played a good foil to Matthew Broderick in Ferris Bueller's Day Off. But it turned out this guy was much worse than an uptight high school principal. Instead, he was creepy in the worst way. In 2002, he was arrested for soliciting someone to do something they should not have been doing at their age. That's putting it very lightly, but you know, YouTube's pretty strict about this stuff. Let's just move on. Up next on the list, we have Bob Marley. Probably very confused and concerned where I'm going with this one. All right, well, I'm not talking about the real Bob Marley. I'm talking about a really bad dude who impersonated Bob Marley. He actually got paid to be a Bob Marley impersonator, but his outlook and behavior in real life wasn't anywhere close to who he was pretending to be. The impersonator in question is named Melvin Edwards, and in 2012 he was convicted of manslaughter for the killing of his wife in their home in Manchester. Edwards worked on a cruise ship performing as Bob Marley. On July 23rd of 2011, his wife Juliet told him that she wanted to end their marriage. Their relationship had slowly been breaking down over the course of months, and she decided she just wanted to move on, but Melvin was furious. He ended up forcing himself on her before taking her life. He ended up receiving a 16-year jail sentence. And next up we have Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll himself. Yes, this is another celebrity impersonator, and honestly this isn't all that shocking. With just the sheer amount of Elvis impersonators out there, you gotta imagine some of them have to be up to no good. It's just basic math. Elvis impersonator in question here is named Michael Conley, and Conley was in some pretty deep trouble. Cops were on his tail for an outstanding warrant, but he wasn't gonna go down without a fight. Instead, he and his 28-year-old son held up inside a Florida motel room. Conley told police that he had C4 explosives and held up a vial of white powder, which he claimed was ricin. If you've ever seen Breaking Bad, you know exactly what ricin is. It's a highly lethal plant byproduct. The FBI, local and state police, SWAT, the bomb squads, they all showed up, and there was this 4-hour standoff. But then Conley's son cooked him some oatmeal and he came to his senses. The Elvis impersonator later said he'd been disoriented due to his diabetes. Now, This isn't the worst thing this guy's done though, far from it. In 1990, Conley killed a guy at a motel in Fort Lauderdale. His conviction was overturned 2 years later because of a prosecution foul-up, and here's the really weird part. While that case was going on, Conley would do his Elvis act outside the courtroom to entertain the courthouse personnel. That's just weird. Anyway, lesson, keep this guy away from hotels, apparently. For a long time, R. Kelly managed to keep his demons trapped behind bars, at bay. He was able to keep his inner demons away from the public eye, sorta. There were always rumors about the creepy stuff he did, but things really blew up thanks to the 29 documentary Surviving R. Kelly. Kelly had been in and out of court since the 90s, and in 2008 he was acquitted of some incredibly serious charges, but in 2019 RCA Records terminated his contract after all the talk about how genuinely messed up this guy was started coming up again, and it even led to a new police investigation. As of 2023, he's been serving a 31-year sentence for his crimes. Marilyn Manson. Yeah, I know it's very 1999 of me to be like, oh, Marilyn Manson's the devil. I'm not talking about all the shock rock imagery. Turns out Marilyn Manson is actually just not the greatest dude. Somewhere around 16 people have come out with allegations against him. Exes coming out with stories about how awful he was in their relationships. Others have come out with SA allegations. It's all pretty not great stuff, and as much as I dug that anti-establishment attitude that he had, especially when I was younger, obviously, the stuff that's come out about him in recent years just makes his 90s and early 2000s wild, crazy rock and roll persona less cool and shocking and more just plain upsetting.
Number 5. Leviathan. Leviathan became a demon of darkness and chaos and a leader of hell mentioned in the Book of Enoch. Leviathan is one of Lucifer's arms and one of the many faces of the devil in Christianity. He is also the representation of the sin envy. Leviathan is a tamer of beasts, a beast collector, and an excellent strategist. He has the power to summon hellish whales that are natural inhabitants of hell and use them in battle. Leviathan appears as a huge sea beast, a very powerful species of a sea serpent dragon. This form is so colossal that it's said to be capable of frightening the bravest of men and is capable of swallowing fishing boats and even ships. Its scales are several small teeth throughout its body, similar to a shark's body. Now, in his human form, Leviathan appears as a handsome young man in his late teens. Although the appearance is similar to a human, he has fish gills on his neck and his ears are pointed. He also has a small shark-like teeth that are hidden under a thin layer of skin in his mouth. Like his name suggests, he is a very jealous person, with Lucifer often being the target though. It should be noted that Leviathan's jealousy isn't limited to only him, so you should watch out. Number 4. Lucifer. Lucifer was one of the most beautiful and indescribable beings created by God, with his wisdom and beauty being described as perfect. However, despite being considered a perfect, beautiful, and glorious being by countless angels, Lucifer was extremely proud and rebelled against his father after refusing to bow down to Adam and Eve. Therefore, Lucifer is known as the first sinner, the devil, and the adversary. Now, Lucifer didn't create any angels, only God had that power, but Lucifer did trick some of them into rebelling against God and becoming his followers, claiming that he was more powerful than God and would take God's place as the ruler of the universe. They believed him, and since then Lucifer has used them to do his will. He's known for the deadly sin of pride, and he used his pride to persuade them. I will ascend to heaven, I will raise my throne above the stars of God, I will make myself like the Most High. Isaiah 14. Lucifer also sends the worst people up to earth to wreak havoc and terrorize everyone, as well as tries to tempt non-sinners to the dark side, so be safe. Number 3. Abaddon. Abaddon is considered the ruler of all demons in the 7th layer of hell, violence, and also the commander of the locusts of Abaddon. Now, what are the locusts? Well, they're scorpion-tailed warhorses that have a man's face with lion's teeth. They are commanded to torment anyone for 5 months who does not have the seal of God on their forehead by using their scorpion-like tails. So, yeah. He rules them. He has eyes as black as night and a huge mouth with many sharp teeth like those of a great white shark. In addition, he wears black armor and his wings have even turned dark. Abaddon is sometimes referred or foreshadowed as death, as they both are neutral entities of two opposing forces. He is also considered both an angel and demon, with neutral and at times lawful agents of both heaven and hell. It is unknown where his allegiance lies. He's often bringing judgment upon people in the name of God, implying that that he works for the Almighty. That being said, Abaddon has also caused events that God would never have wanted to happen, let alone the fact that Abaddon helped Lucifer during the war in heaven. Seems like he liked to play both sides. It's also said during Judgment Day he will gather the souls of the damned and carry them down to the place of God's final judgment. Number 2. Asmodeus. Asmodeus is a demon who personifies and represents lust, the sexual sin related to adultery. He is the demon who exists as the arch-rival of the angel of chastity, Gabriel. Asmodeus is also referred to as one of the 7 princes of hell and represents one of the 7 deadly sins, being lust. Asmodeus is a demon of lust and is therefore responsible for twisting people's sexual desires. It is said that people who fall to Asmodeus' ways will be sentenced to an eternity in the 2nd level of hell. He is also a demon of lechery, jealousy, anger, and revenge. In hell, Asmodeus looks human, however he has stark black eyes and 2 rows of shark teeth sticking out of his mouth. In this form, Asmodeus has no hair on his head, but has a muscular appearance from the waist up and 2 bat wings protruding from his back. From the waist down, he has what looks like kangaroo legs and a long dragon's tail. His horrible appearance is capable of causing fear and repudiation in humans who fall into hell, and that's the demon's intention. And coming up at number 1 is Satan. Satan is a prominent demon in the hierarchy of hell. He is known for bringing evil and temptation, and is known as the deceiver who leads humanity astray. Satan is even able to take control of the life of a person in the stead of God, though only to an extent to what God allows. Satan would appear to those who are sinful, playing into their hearts and towing them into despair. He may either be depicted as a rebel to the will of God, or as one who tempts mankind to commit sin to show God that mankind can easily be led astray from him. He is described as the ruler of the demons and the god of this age. In Revelation, Satan appears as a great red dragon who is ultimately banished from heaven by Michael the archangel. Satan is mostly known as the devil, and although the book of Genesis does not mention him, he is often identified with the serpent in the Garden of Eden. Satan is also said to be associated with one of the 7 deadly sins, being wrath, and is one of the 7 princes of hell.
At our number 5 spot is the jinn. These entities are known to enter a victim's room, suddenly pouncing on them and pressing down with all their weight, rendering the person completely immobile. To make matters worse, they often attempt to strangle their helpless victims. Getting rid of a jinn isn't a walk in the park. The solution typically involves prayer to Allah, seeking divine intervention to banish these demonic entities. But there are variations of the story that depict the jinn wearing a hat, and according to some accounts, the solution typically involves prayer to Allah, seeking divine intervention to banish these demonic entities, but there are variations of the story that depict the jinn wearing a hat, and according to some accounts, if you manage to seize the hat from the creature, you gain control over it. But attempting to snatch a hat from a supernatural being doesn't sound like the safest bet, and there's little evidence of this ever working. Phenomenon of sleep paralysis is unsettling, and that this is definitely kind of an attempt at an explanation for that. Anyway, the jinn often associated with these nightmarish experiences in Turkish folklore. Next on the list we have Ammit. Now, while she's not a demon in the traditional sense, she is a figure in Egyptian mythology associated with the afterlife, and what this entity does is pretty horrific. Ammit, translated to devourer of the dead, is depicted as a fearsome creature with a combination of animal features: the head of a crocodile, the front legs of a lion, and the hind legs of a hippopotamus, the 3 most prominent man-eating animals that were known to ancient Egyptians. Ammit's role is judgment of the dead, particularly during the weighing of the heart ceremony. In the afterlife, the hearts of the deceased were weighed against the feather of Mat, the goddess of truth and justice. If a person's heart was found to be heavier than the feather, it indicated a life filled with wrongdoing and sin, and this is where Ammit came into play. She stood by, ready to devour those deemed unworthy. If your heart was consumed by her, it meant eternal damnation, with your soul ceasing to exist for eternity. I'm gonna guess that the possibility of dying and then being met with a crocodile, hippo, lion monster who may eat you whole probably motivated a number of people to try not to be pricks during their lifetime. Number 3, Lamashtu. Lamashtu comes from Mesopotamian mythology. She's a demon goddess often depicted with a lion's head and donkey-like teeth, the bird-like feet, and a tangled mess of hair. Lamashtu's primary claim to infamy is her malevolent activities with, again, pregnant women and infants as her prime targets. She's known to prowl around, lurking for opportunities to wreak havoc. This includes abducting newborns and committing gruesome acts like sucking their blood, or even nursing them herself sometimes, which is also an unsettling image. Her reign of terror doesn't stop there, though. She's also associated with bringing diseases, causing nightmares, polluting water, all great stuff, just causing general misery wherever she goes. In ancient Mesopotamia, Lamashtu was anything but popular, and people went to great lengths to protect themselves from her evil. They crafted amulets and chanted incantations to safeguard mothers and their babies from falling victim to her. And at number 2, we have Papa Bawa. This is an interesting one because it's actually a demonic creature that people have reported encounters with in relatively recent years. It's kind of in that cryptid territory. This demonic entity originates from the Tanzanian island of Pemba. Encounters with this being have been documented as far back as 1965, but it was in 1995 that reports of its activities gained more widespread attention. So, what exactly is the Papa Bawa? Describing its appearance isn't super straightforward, as it's said to take on a number of forms. It can resemble a bat, a human, or a winged. It's some kind of combination of a winged creature, sometimes with a single eye positioned in the center of its head. The creature is notorious for targeting men, often attacking them during the night. But it doesn't stop at physical attacks. It's also said to have the ability to possess its victims. Strangely, the Papa Bawa has a peculiar method of spreading fear. After an encounter, it compels its victims to share their experience with others, warning that it will return if they remain silent. And this demand has contributed to the legend's impact on the collective psyche. In 2007, a series of sightings and attacks were reported to this creature, causing a wave of fear among the local population. Many men started staying awake at night. Some even slept in groups in order to help protect themselves from it. And we're closing out the list with the wendigo. Wendigo is a creature from North American indigenous folklore. They're described as horrifying, emaciated beings with decaying skin stretched tightly over this skeletal frame. And their appearance alone is nightmarish enough, and it's just as horrifying as it looks, with an insatiable hunger for human flesh, showing no mercy to its victims. The legend says that those who taste human flesh may become possessed by the wendigo spirit, transferring it into themselves. And this concept of a malevolent force taking over someone's body, turning them into something dark, driving them to become cannibals, a pretty unsettling idea. Wendigo stories are often linked to the harsh realities of surviving in the northern wilderness during brutal winters, where scarcity of food has been known to push people to extremes, and it's in these times of desperation where the wendigo is said to emerge. And it's in these times of desperation where the wendigo emerges, compelling people to take a bite out of their best friend or even their own family. This next video comes from a woman named Mandy Mary, who spotted something incredibly creepy on camera. Take a look at this. Did you catch that? It happens very fast, but as the lights flicker, you can spot what looks to be this shadowy figure peering out from the doorway, and it's definitely not there when the lights are on. Now, why did the lights flicker? Well, Mandy's son had flicked them himself. Mandy wrote in the description of the video, "This video is from my back house. My son was behind me when I recorded this. We were creeped out as we've seen a dark figure back there many times. So thought it would be a good idea to record there at night. We videotaped and he tried to spook me by flicking the light. The moment he turned off the light, you could see the outside light from the window. Within this outside light, you can see a dark shadow figure standing there. This wasn't us. Some of the people I've shown this to said, 'It's your son.' I said, 'No way. He was right behind me and that shadow figure was in the middle of the window, reflection, not the door we were at, so no way it was him. Every night I see dark shadows walking back and forth, making my backlight sensor flip on and off. Also, about a month ago, something shook my door so hard it shook my entire hallway. Speaking of hallways, this next person was attacked on camera by what appears to be some invisible force in the hallway. Take a look. Yeah, damn right, turn around and go back where you came. Whoever this guy was visiting, whatever plans he had at the end of that hallway, they were crossed off his list as soon as he hit the ground. What in the hell happened there? This CCTV security camera footage was taken in what looks to be the hallway of some sort of facility, like a doctor's office. Could also be an apartment, but it's hard to tell. You'll notice that before the guy even falls down and gets dragged, this black shadowy shape starts to form, and once it drags the guy a few feet down the hall, it fades back away, releasing the man who rightly gets up and books it back down the hall. This next one has to be one of my favorite spooky internet videos. Some have compared this creepy woman to a witch, others have said it may be a djinn. Whatever she is though, she's downright creepy, and this just makes for a very unsettling watch. The video was apparently shot in Saudi Arabia. It shows a man driving on a narrow, empty road. As he's driving, we can clearly spot this strange, hunched figure in the distance. The figure moves in this really unnatural way, hobbling around. It's also hard to make out where its head is because it's all hunched. It just looks completely wrong. And the man filming thinks so too, because you can clearly hear how terrified he is. He sounds completely panicked, even on the verge of tears. Honestly, his reaction is kind of what makes the video. At one point he tries to reverse away from the figure, but the road is so narrow and winding that he can't move very quickly, and the witch-like figure just keeps gaining on him, waddling towards the car with that unsettling gait, getting closer and closer, but never deciding to get right up close. It's like she's just toying with him. Unless you've been hiding under a rock for the past couple years, which based on some of the videos on this list, I can understand why you would, you've probably heard of the Serbian dancing lady craze. People coming across lone women dancing in the street late at night for seemingly no reason. Take a look at this. Sorry, not sorry. That one gets you? Look, it's spooky season now. You gotta be ready for this sort of thing. Gotta be on your toes. Alright, well, I don't think it gets any more classically demonic looking than this image here. The photo shows a large winged figure. It was taken in Phoenix, Arizona by a man named Richard Christensen in 2017. He wasn't sure what he captured, and neither was anyone else. Some people think it looks like a Mothman, others think it might look like an angel, or, of course, the opposite. But, like everything on this list, what do you think? Let us know down below. This image right here comes from Reddit user According Pangolin84, who writes, I'm not familiar with ghosts and paranormal things, so I don't know the logic behind anything, but I came across this old photo I have from a haunted mansion in Utah. This place was a hot spot to break into during high school, and my friends did it and wanted a photo while I stayed back in the car. The figure in the back is what I suspect to be some kind of ghost. I only had 2 friends go in the house for a photo. The Reddit user also gave some context about this haunted mansion itself in a follow-up post, writing, it's called the Benjamin Pump House in Utah. It has no electricity and is pretty much empty on the inside besides garbage. Growing up, I heard a lot of stories about scary interactions in the house, people reporting footsteps and the feelings of being watched. As far as my friends and what they felt, all I can recall is them talking about what sounded like someone walking through the brush around the house, and there was a weird creaking that also circled around the house, but nothing in relation to being watched or feeling like there was someone else in there. This image here was shared by Reddit user PositiveCable1487, who writes, earlier this month my sister and her partner went to the Stanley Hotel. Don't know the backstory on the mirror, but apparently there are many reports of sightings in it. This is the photo my sister took. She said the mirror was squeaky clean in person, no smudges. Now this image may not be all that creepy on its own, but the Stanley Hotel definitely is. Let me tell you fine folks about it. The Stanley Hotel is famously the hotel that inspired Stephen King to write The Shining. He'd been snowed in there with his family in 1974 while on a trip to the Rocky Mountains National Park. They happened to be the only guests there. and found the place rather eerie. And King isn't the only guest to have found the place unsettling. Tons of people have reported spooky encounters at the hotel, like the ghost of a woman named Mrs. Wilson, former chambermaid, said to haunt room 217. Staff have reported hearing sounds of people dancing and laughing in the ballroom, only to find nobody there. Guests will often report seeing dark figures standing over their beds at night, and it's said that the spirit of the former landowner, Lord Dunraven, will often be seen staring out the window of room 407. From TikToker Ahab Kasmaya 1 comes a terrifying encounter he had while exploring an abandoned building. He's filming down a dark hallway when suddenly a knocking sound is heard off camera, and when the urban explorer pans to take a look, this is what happened. Now, instead of screaming at the top of his lungs and running away at top speed, the brave man begins praying instead, and the entity retreats back into the shadows. Which, you know what, hey, seemed to work great and all, but here's another idea: just don't be there in the first place. You win every fight you walk away from at the end of the day. Reddit user HealthyMagician895 posted this series of images here, along with a description reading: I was messing around in my mom's room taking a video when my friend pointed out something at the corner of the door. At the end of the video, I went back to the mirror, but it was gone. Can somebody explain this? I'm genuinely creeped out. And yeah, fair enough. I'd be genuinely creeped out too if I saw that thing peeking out at me from the doorway. Here's what's interesting about this photo too. It reminds me a lot of a video I shared in part 1. If you'd like to watch part 1, by the way, link is in the description. But just for a quick comparison, check this out. Yeah, pretty eerily similar. Even the positioning. What do you all think though? Hoax? Or is there a ghoulish demon thing crawling around people's houses and peering out at them from the tops of door frames? I certainly hope not. Imagine hearing a noise in your hallway at 3 a.m., going out into your hallway to check it out, and spotting this. This one comes from TikToker Official Empty Alien. I don't even care that's not real. I had to throw it on here because that is some fuel for your nightmares right there. The long fingers slowly creeping into frame. I think that's what really does it for me. This is pretty much the exact face I'd scare the crap out of myself, imagining it as a youngster popping up in a window or glaring at me from the bottom of the stairs at night. It's kind of uncanny actually too. The white face, the glare, the big eyes and the teeth. I don't know, it's always what I'd imagine for whatever reason, and then I'd be up all night. Fun times. Anyway, now we can't talk about demons without mentioning at least another yokai. There are tons of these creatures and entities that fall under the yokai umbrella in Japanese folklore. They include demons, ghosts, monsters, and there's loads of types of each. The Enko are river-dwelling yokai, resembling monkeys. Don't let their appearance deceive you into thinking the worst they'll do is play a little trick on you though. These are some violent, sadistic animals right here, and tales about them get very graphic. Enko are said to live in rivers and along the seashore. They're kinda like kappa, who are more like turtle creatures, but these ones are way worse. They're excellent swimmers, and if you happen to come across one while taking a dip, it's probably gonna be game over for you in the worst way. See, these creatures love eating human liver, fresh human liver. Their method of obtaining it, shoving their arm right up their victim's rear end and pulling it out. The worst rectal exam you'll ever receive.
Have you ever woken up in the middle of the night only to discover that you can't move your arms or legs? Not only that, but you can't seem to muster up the ability to make a sound, and so when you see a dark scraggly demon lurking at the foot of your bed or sitting directly on top of you, all you can do is sit there and stare at it, feeling nothing but pure terror. Well, if you have, it sounds like you've been visited by a Phi Am. The Phi Am has its roots in Thai folklore, where it is believed to be the lesser known cause of the well-known phenomenon of sleep paralysis. Phi Ams have been known to sit on their victims' chests in the middle of the night, restricting their movement and instilling fear into their souls, and in extreme cases, crushing their lungs entirely and taking their lives. It is said that the creature tends to haunt men more than women, and so in some places where the demons are more common, men have actually been known to don traditional women's bedtime clothing to avoid being haunted by the demon. Small price to pay for not having your lungs crushed.
The Alp is a creepy creature from German folklore, and it's the stuff of nightmares, literally. Known for causing horrible nightmares, the Alp is said to sit on its victims' chests in the middle of the night, causing the sleeper to wake up in a panic, unable to breathe or move as they're crushed under the weight of the creature. Yes, this is another sleep paralysis demon. The Alp is usually described as a small elf-like being, but it can shape-shift into other forms, usually animals like cats, dogs, or snakes. It's also said to sometimes ride a horse. The Alp also wears a special cap that gives it the power to become invisible, sneak into people's homes unseen. This is just another one of the many demonic entities people used to try and explain sleep paralysis back in the day. And when people would wake up feeling terrified, unable to move, with a heavy pressure on their chest, having a hallucination of something sitting on top of them or lurking at the foot of their beds, it's no wonder people thought there were malevolent demons roaming around in the night. I can only imagine how horrifying it would have been to grow up around this time. I mean, I've had sleep paralysis, and if my mother told me that it was thanks to a demon, I would just never go to bed again.
The Mongolian death worm demon is honestly just gross. It's gross. It's gross to look at, it's gross to think about, and yet here I am talking about it to you because I respect you enough to know that you are brave enough to handle the gross demon worm. And I'm proud of you for that. Now, while many zoologists believe that the idea of the Mongolian demon worm comes from an exaggeration of real snake and worm sightings, Mongolian locals to this day claim otherwise, and many of them say that they have actually seen this giant creature for themselves and just narrowly escaped its vicious attack. You see, Mongolian death worms are said to have a large circular row of incredibly sharp teeth and venom that acts like acid. My advice, if you're in Mongolia, avoid the desert. And maybe you will make it out alive.
This demon is about as evil and demonic as a demon can be. Lamashtu, another demon from Sumerian and Mesopotamian mythology. An entity with the head of a lion and long, sharp talons and claws like a bird. Lamashtu really doesn't have any redeeming qualities. Some of her hobbies include, but are not limited to, messing with women while they're pregnant, kidnapping newborns, sucking out men's blood, infesting rivers and lakes, spreading disease and sickness in general, ruining crops, and giving people nightmares. Lamashtu was so terrifyingly evil that people would often try to ward her off with the help of another demon, Pazuzu, Lamashtu's arch nemesis. The Batman to her Joker, the He-Man to her Skeletor, the list goes on, you get my point.
Imagine, you're walking home one night, it's dark, and you're all alone. All of a sudden you look up and realize you're standing face to face with the most beautiful woman you've ever seen. She has piercing eyes, shiny black hair, and then she starts to smile, exposing 2 rows of red-stained, razor-sharp teeth. You fall backwards to see that something is missing. Her body. This woman isn't a woman at all, just a floating head with half a neck and a trail of guts and organs hanging out. You have stumbled across a karasu hungry for human flesh. There are many different stories regarding the origin of this creature who hunts at night and then returns to her headless body in the morning to go about her day indistinguishable from any other woman except for her tired expression. The most popular is that the karasu was a princess living in Cambodia in the 15th century who was engaged to a prince but in love with someone else, a commoner. Eventually she was caught in her affair and sentenced to death by fire. She consulted a witch who cast a spell of protection for the young princess, but unfortunately the spell didn't kick in until the fires had almost reached the young woman's head. Other stories claim that the demon is a woman who broke a deal with another demon or a woman who made a grave mistake while practicing black magic. However she came to be, people in Thai culture say that those who consult with demons or practice similar magic are doomed to meet the same fate as the princess when they die.
Have you been unfortunate enough to meet one of these demons in person?
I have not. Have you?
Share your thoughts and experiences down below.
Cheers, friends.
Want to see more videos like this one? Check out this video next. This video is about real encounters with demons from the Bible that will leave you shaking from head to toe. Are you too scared to check it out? Click the video now. Viewer discretion is heavily advised.